One person is dead when a motorcyclist speeding down the street behind me here.
That is one of the scariest things that can happen on a bike. So I'm going to tell you what causes that and how to actually prevent that. There's two things that actually cause that: mechanical errors and rider errors. We're going to cover both, and we're also going to talk about what to do if you're actually in that situation. So the first thing we're going to actually talk about is tire pressure. So any Wawa, if you guys are on the East Coast, I know the West Coast doesn't have it, I don't believe, but you can get free air at Wawa. Just a little tip if you guys didn't know that. So I just made sure the tire pressure was correct on this bike, because it actually does make a big difference, and people kind of just throw it off like I do, but I literally just proved to myself how much it matters. So I have another bike. When I was riding it, I noticed there was a lot of movement in the handlebars, right? It was just like unstable. It was like shaky, really shaky. And I checked the tire pressure yesterday and went for a ride on that bike, and I found out that it was 8 pounds below what it was supposed to be. And as soon as I did the tire pressure, it literally made it ride so much better. It was night and day. So tire pressure is very important. A lot of people just kind of forget about that, and they're like, whatever, you know. But your tire pressure is actually extremely important to how your bike rides. So do not forget to do your tire pressure. This thing's loud, man. You see that, dude? If you guys can see that down there, that's called a steering damper. If you see it down there, it says KYB. You need to make sure your steering damper is working correctly. That's extremely important. If it's not working right, you're at more risk of the death wobbles, right? So it can kind of, and what will happen is sometimes it'll start like this and then correct itself. And the way to make sure it's working right is if you go side to side, there should be no resistance at all in the steering. There's actually bearings inside. They're actually supposed to be serviced. Now, this is a newer bike, so this one works fine. So some older bikes aren't going to have this. Like if you get to like the 05s and stuff, first time they put them on these bikes was 06. If like you rip it and the weight kind of shifts to the back and the front end comes up, that damper's responsible to help correct that steering. So little shakes and stuff like that are normal at high speeds. But if you're noticing a lot of movement in your steering like this or like this, replace the steering damper. That's a huge deal. My other bike is older, so that's an upgrade I'm going to do to it. The steering damper works, however, it doesn't work as good as this one, because this one is a lot newer and it's a brand name one. So you should be able to turn the steering really easy. It shouldn't fight you at all. And if it is, then you got a problem. You need a new steering dampener. If you don't have one at all, you need to get one. So like I mentioned, older bikes aren't going to have them. But what you can do is you can get an adjustable steering dampener. How that works is it goes on top and you can actually adjust it yourself. So if you're on the highway or something, you can turn it up and you don't have that free play in the steering, because that's dangerous. Another thing to check is your wheel bearings. If you put your bike on the stand and you lift it up and you move the wheel back and forth, there should be no play. If there is, then you need wheel bearings. That's why it's also important too, when you guys are like washing your bike, you don't want to hold it directly like in places like over here, right where the wheel bearings are, or like down by your linkage where you lower the bike. There's bearings in there and water isn't supposed to get in there, so you don't want to just like take a power washer and just hold it there. If one of the seals is failing or something and water gets in, one of your wheel bearings is going to fail, and that's not good. That can cause what we're talking about today. Another thing that can cause the speed wobbles is incorrect suspension settings. So let's say you buy a bike used and you're a lot heavier than the guy that you bought it from. You need to have the suspension set for you and the sag set for you. If you're carrying a passenger, same type of thing. If you have more weight in the back, that's why they have different tire pressures set for passengers. Actually the same, this is the same setting even if I ride solo or with the passenger. But when you start accelerating, the weight shifts back anyways. If you got somebody on the back, it's going to make that problem even worse. And now your front end's going to be light, and if you gas it, you're going to, you're going to get that unstable type of thing. So now we're going to be talking about rider errors. What actually causes speed wobbles? Like, what can you do as a rider, like when you're actually on the bike, to prevent it? So if I'm in like a real low gear and I just gas it like this, right? Be careful when you're applying that throttle. Try and roll on it and try and be in the right gear, not super high, then gun it, then shift really fast and jerk the bike. That will cause the speed wobbles too. Now the next thing too is wheelies. Hey man, wheelies are cool, I get it, but if you're doing high-speed wheelies, especially on the highway, man, this is where it gets stupid. And it all goes wrong like this. So when you got the bike up, right, especially if you're going fast, like 60, 70, 80, whatever, when you come down, you can't just drop the front end like this. You have to gradually bring it down and kind of accelerate as you're coming down so it doesn't slam. If you're in the air, especially the higher you are and the faster you're going, if you have a sudden drop and you just drop on the ground and the wheels slightly turned, you're gonna have this type of thing going on. And then next thing you know, it's out of control and then you can't stop it, right? That's why I say don't do them on these things, especially on the highway. Do them in parking lots or something like that. Don't be doing it on the highway. I know it looks cool and all that stuff, but it's dangerous. We know wheelies and dumb stuff and sudden acceleration can cause it, but another thing that can cause it too is incorrect grip, okay? What you want to do is you want to loosen up. Just like this, just be loose and let the bike do the work. Don't have your elbows locked and super tight grip like this. So if you notice, he has his hands like this and then it suffers a tank slapper. So the reason why you don't want to do that is at high speeds you're going to get, little shakes and wobbles and things like that. If you're like this, you're going to overcorrect it, versus if you're relaxed and like this, you'll just kind of absorb it. The way it's designed is, I mentioned that damper on there is designed to dampen the steering, so it will correct itself if you have the correct grip and you're not riding like a, and you're not doing things to cause that type of thing to happen, then you shouldn't have a problem. So let the machine do its work, have a loose, light grip, and let it absorb it type of thing. You don't want to be fighting it. Then you actually get the tank slappers, and then then it's a big problem. Now what happens if you're actually in the situation it actually happens to you, right? So if you notice in that video, once it suffered a full-on tank slapper, he let off of the handlebars and leaned forward a little bit. It's going to weigh down that front end in hopes of correcting that speed wobble and straighten it out. Whatever you do, do not grab that front brake to try and slow down. If you grab the brake, if you grab the front brake with the handlebars going like this, you are instantly going to go down because you don't have any traction in the front and all the weight's going to go forward and you're going to be on the ground. So don't do that. If you need to slow down more, use that back brake to help slow you down like this and lean forward a little bit. Also too, if you have like an obstacle in front of you, what you need to do is use your body to help get you out of the way. You can lean far down like this to kind of get out of the way if you had to. But hopefully it corrects itself before you have to do that. But if you had to do that, you want to use your body like this to kind of help get yourself out of the way, because you can't use the handlebars. But you see, wherever my weight goes is where the bike's going to go. So that's what you'd actually want to do. But the main thing to do is don't ride like an idiot and make sure you do proper maintenance, and you shouldn't have this problem